artists they have these weird sort of psychological games that they play. Like I've known many artists who talk about like them being screwed up. And that, like, if I, and I would talk to them about going into therapy, and they'd be like, no, if I go into therapy, then whatever it is like that drives my work is gonna go away. But I after my divorce, I went into therapy because I saw I am never gonna go through this again. It's like, and also to whatever extent I had contributed to the mess up, I was like, I'd broken my drawing hand when I was drinking in my marriage, and I quit everything. I was like, okay, it was like a wake-up call. I'm throwing it all away here? I mean, this is ridiculous. So I gave up drinking. I haven't had a beer in like 30, I'll have a scotch occasionally, but I haven't like had red meat in 30 some years. Stopped smoking. I'd given up coffee, although I drink, espresso and stuff like that. But I mean, I gave up everything, and including my marriage. And I think that I doubled down on committing to my artwork. And I think part of the reason I think she ended up having affairs because I was always at the studio. I was just obsessed with getting better. So I was certainly not there. And plus I was not happy, So I like my idea of going into therapy and then pushing and going away from the Neil Adams thing. It's like, I'm gonna make my mark. I'm gonna do my thing. It's like anger was so much a part of it. And I think if you can channel it, there's no such thing as negative, it's not the feelings. The feelings are the feelings. It's what you do with them. So, and that's when I did the issue 26 of Moon Knight called Hit It. Because I sort of felt like, life hands you lemons, and then you can either smash the lemons or throw them at people and hit them in the face with them, or you can make, lemon meringue pie and lemon, it's like anything. And I sort of tried to, rather than having it be another issue of the Cape of the Month and Villain of the Month Club, I just wanted to do a story about a guy who's angry, anger, the unresolved issues, and it's what you do with it. Like, you can either become a singer, and make music, or you can be something that is a negative environment for the rest of the people that you ever deal with. And that was when I felt like that issue of Moon Knight, where everything clicked and it became, I was feeling like I wanted the issue to feel like it had a musical element to it. So I wanted it to have a rhythm, and beat it and hit it. And it stopped feeling like the medium was about necessarily good versus evil, or about, Cape of the Month, or, global domination. And it became about what the medium was potential in terms of how you could arrange panels on a page and tell the story. I'd wanted to be able to draw well enough to get something to look like what it's supposed to. But that was the first time when I was trying to capture emotional aspects of things, about how they felt. I can't even say that it was a conscious choice, like I'm gonna do how things feel, but they did. But there were times I know that I said that. Like when I was drawing like the Neil Adams clone phase, the idea of Neil would draw somebody who's anger and the mouth would be sort of extended beyond where, like hyper realism. Whereas like Kirby was just, everything was so over the top and exaggerated. But I wanted to sort of try to capture like a sort of a subtler, more ambivalent, ambiguous sense of emotion and discomfort in terms of how the image was portrayed. Like if you do a drawing of a beautiful woman in a light, very light pencil and a very thin, delicate line, it says something very much. The way it's created says something about the subject matter. And then you can do that same woman with like a piece of big, thick charcoal and still have elements of delicacy to it, but has a bolder kind of. So I felt that the way you put something down on paper would also be part of the storytelling. It conveys subconsciously what people are looking at. And that was sort of antithetical to the way that things were done in comics, where it was like, if a character was like Deja Thoris or something, she'd have a certain look, attire, and every character had to remain consistent, like through the story. And also, I started to realize early on. When I was working with Doug Mensch on Moon Knight, I was getting a script and I was drawing the images and following the script. And I realized that I wanted to have more of a say in how the story was being told. I didn't want to just be a set of hands. And that's what it sort of felt like I was becoming, through no fault of Doug. I mean, I just wanted more creative control. I wanted to write, because when I was growing up, I'd written all of my own comics. So a lot of the sort of having a character look like a character's supposed to look, I'd sort of blown through that, getting it to look right in my teens. It was like, okay, now I want to, push, find something that makes it interesting for me to do it now. So I started to chafe at the idea of doing, much more straightforward stuff, because it just held no interest for me. And I wanted to really sort of see what was possible with different media and with different outside influences, like collage and photography and painting. Because that's when I said I started doing painted covers for the Dazzler and for Rom and a couple of other books. But it was like I said I've got to paint. I literally have to start doing this stuff now. And luckily Marvel and the editors that were there wanted me to start trying these painted covers. There were so many things that were, frowned upon, not even frowned upon, just that weren't done. And here was this, this kid coming in from farm country in Jersey, who's like, I was like, I want to do this. Can I do this? It's like, and the editors luckily were really supportive. They were just there with me to sort of, let's see. And it was like an explosive creative time, because I got to meet, it was at the time I was, hanging with Frank Miller and Dennis Cowan. In the early 80s, it's like comics were starting to really push into a whole different kind of age.